Blacks in technology.
Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology.
On this episode of the Bit Tech Talk podcast, Greg sits down with recent tech bootcamp graduate Deshe Woods. Deshe shares her journey of participating in the Tech Elevator Bootcamp after receiving a Bit Foundation scholarship in 2022, when she made the decision to pivot from a career in education and nonprofit and dive into the tech sphere. Sit back and relax as we learn more about our wonderful guest with our host of the Bit Tech Talk podcast, Greg Greenlee.
Hey, Deshe, welcome to the podcast.
I'm happy to be here, Greg. How are you?
Doing pretty well. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good. I can't complain.
Excellent. So, we always typically start our Q&A with, telling us a little bit about yourself, kind of where you're from, your education, things like that.
Alrighty. Well, I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan. I was born and raised there.
Okay.
Um, and I did my undergrad over at Western Michigan University in Kalamazoo. Got my degree in art education. Then decided that I wanted to move to Grand Rapids, where I currently am. Did a little bit of work within education and nonprofit,
Mm-hmm.
and now currently I just made that career change, and I'm in tech right now, and I'm loving it.
Excellent. Are you a Pistons fan, or is how does what is your loyalty lay in Detroit?
I'm pretty loyal to all the teams. The
Okay.
Lions. I always say, like, especially with the Pistons and the Lions, like, we always have like this underdog faith, even though,
Yeah.
like, we're hoping that they can get to, the finals. We're always, cheering and rooting for them every year. So,
Nice.
I'm always going to have faith, that the Pistons going to make it, the Lions going to make it, everybody from Detroit is going to make it.
Right. Yeah, I've been to Detroit a few times. Um, there was actually a conference, a software developers conference up there called Self, and it was held at, is it the River City Casino or Motor City? Which
Yep,
I think
Motor City.
Motor City Casino. And the wife and I, we go up there. We just make kind of like a weekend of it. I like Detroit. I like you know what? Because I come from, I live in Cincinnati, and Detroit is black.
Yes, yes, it
Anything.
is.
So
You're gonna
it's a
see your people there for
yeah.
sure.
So it's a totally different atmosphere and environment, and people are super welcoming, and yeah. So I love coming up there.
Nice.
So you came, from a career in education. What specifically did you do? I know you graduated from was it Western Michigan with a degree in education, but after that, like, kind of what were some of your jobs and your titles?
Yeah, so originally I was running an arts program for the Boys and Girls Club in the greater Kalamazoo.
Mm,
Did that for a couple of years. So, did all of their arts, music, creative writing, dance, pretty much anything you can think of creatively was what
nice.
I ran over at the Boys and Girls Club. Decided to kind of shift more into education a little bit and
Hmm.
became an ELA specialist at a charter academy over in Kalamazoo. Realized that education wasn't necessarily something I wanted to do, but I still wanted to be involved with the youth, with the kids. And so
Right.
I ended up getting a program manager, program coordinator position for the city of Wyoming for their Parks and Recreation program and ran that program for 2 years.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's pretty much what I did prior to making that transition on over into tech.
So it sounds like you were kind of like on the artistic side of education for a while. What were
Yes.
you an artistic person? Like, how did that come about?
Yeah, like, I've always been told that I was extremely creative, and I felt,
Okay.
hey, if I'm creative, then I might as well, go to school doing something that, I'm good at and I love to do. So, What my education consisted of was art education specifically. So
Okay.
I wanted to go in being an art teacher, and but I kind of realized that I I didn't necessarily want to teach in like um, a formal classroom environment. I wanted to have a little bit more freedom and flexibility on how creative I could be
Hmm.
teaching the kids. And so that's kind of why I steered a little bit away from teaching in the actual like classroom as an art teacher. But I
Okay.
loved working in nonprofit. I loved being able to expose, especially like Black kids, to certain things that maybe they don't get the opportunity to do in
Right.
school or in their normal day-to-day lives. And I just wanted to be kind of a representation of, hey, there are Black, artists, there are Black, creatives that love what they do and want to be able to give back to their community. And so um yeah, I loved my time as an artist back then. I still do a little
Right.
bit of it now. I'm
Uh-huh.
mostly a painter, so painting was
Okay.
what I concentrated in when I was at Western. So I just pretty much do that on my downtime when I just need a break and I need to do
Nice.
a little bit of mindless work. So yeah, that's pretty much what I do creatively right now.
Very cool. Very cool. And you know, I know software engineering is not exactly art, but I think there's a creative side of
Mm,
coding and things like that that you can bring from your artistic and your creative mind. As a matter of fact, a lot of people don't understand or might not know is that especially nowadays with non-traditional education around boot camps and kind
mhm,
of being able to be self-taught, that there are software engineers that don't come from a CS background, right? And when you start looking into their backgrounds, you see that there's a number of them that are actually artists. They're
mhm.
musicians. They're painters. They're creatives and things like that. And from what I understand, it really helps them, in their software development and kind of being able to think creatively and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely helps me per se because I will say when you're in a creative space or when
Hmm.
you come from a creative background, you deal a lot with criticism and making mistakes to have it kind of help build you grow. I mean, help you build and grow.
Yeah.
You allow yourself to make mistakes. You allow yourself to fall so that you can find different methods of doing different things. And so that's really one of the big things that really helped me in my transition was, not being afraid to make those mistakes and
Hmm.
kind of being able to think outside the box a little bit, right? Because when you're creative, you always want to, make that shock value, or you always want to either get people to think or you want
Right.
people to, kind of see your vision of what it is that you're trying to put out there. And a
Right.
lot of times you do have to think outside of the box or, kind of disrupt the pattern in terms of what is normally done. And I feel like a lot of that, is easily transferable, into a software engineering role, right? Because you're going to be able to find different pathways to get to the same goal. And
Right.
sometimes doing it, one way may not necessarily work for you. And sometimes you do have to kind of think creatively or think outside the box and say, hey, I need this solution. I can't figure out the solution to this specific problem.
Right.
What are some other things that I can do that I haven't done yet that could possibly get it to work? So, I've always a big proponent of, creatives turn tech.
Yeah.
Because they always bring that innovation, they always bring that creativity to the space, and I
Yeah.
always say that if you really want to go far in tech, you really have to be innovative and you really have to be creative with how you move about in this space. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
No, you
it's a
said a
great
lot,
thing.
and I wholeheartedly agree with you. And it's a really a good time to kind of have that mindset as far as failing and kind of learning from those failures. I Because I've been in tech for over 20 something years, and back in the day, making a mistake could be a death wish, and
Hmm.
nowadays. company cultures are adopting, having a blameless culture, right? And
Mhm.
using failures as teaching moments as opposed to disciplinary moments, right?
Mhm.
And so it's all about the post mortem, right? Like
Right.
if there's an outage or if there's some bad code that happens to make it way in production and cause everything to fail. Oh, like how did that happen? And what
Mhm.
can we do to mitigate that in the future? And let's have this post mortem and hash everything out so that we all can learn from it. Like that's kind of where things have been for a number of years.
Mhm.
So I think that's a really good mindset to have, and it's a really good time to be in tech because of that.
Absolutely.
BIT is always focused on forming new partnerships and opportunities to assist the community and our members with their continued professional growth and development. If you'd like to partner with us, send an email, inquiries@blacksintechnology.net.
So you were. I know you mentioned what job was the nonprofit?
So I worked for several. So
Okay.
the first nonprofit I worked for was the Boys and Girls Club.
Okay.
And then I made a transition into the city of Wyoming for their after school program. And then my last nonprofit that I worked at was called Playworks. I
Mm,
don't know if you've heard of it before, but essentially they're revolutionizing the way that kids play. And
okay.
it's basically being able to kind of take recess and turn it into a classroom where kids can learn about social emotional learning, and be able to learn kind of like those social skills while they play. And so I worked there for
Interesting.
a little bit before I transitioned into tech. So I love Playworks. If you ever get a chance to, you
I'll have to
know,
check that out. Yeah.
yeah, definitely, definitely, they have a great curriculum and a great program over there.
Okay. Nice. Nice. So tell me, like you worked in the educational space, nonprofit space. What made you decide to pivot and your career and get into the tech?
I always say that I think for a lot of people, COVID has played a big part in
Yeah.
kind of making people, be really self-reflective and introspective on kind of like where they are in life and where they're
Hmm.
looking to go. And while I loved what I did, I felt like I was very stagnant in my learning. I consider myself to be a lifelong learner.
Yeah.
So if I'm in spaces that continue to challenge me or continue to push me to learn and grow, I feel like that's where I thrive. And I felt
Mm,
like in that moment, while I didn't feel like I was being, challenged enough, and I felt like I just wanted something different.
right.
And I got exposed to tech through like a number of different things. I had friends who were considering tech that had recommended, like, hey, you should, try to check out coding and see if you like it. Social
Hmm.
media has definitely played a big part in, exposing people, especially Black people, to tech, because I think a
Yeah.
lot of us, and, I'm sure you've been in it for a long time. So I'm sure you've noticed that a lot of times there's not a whole lot of representation, or there hasn't been a whole lot of representation of, Black people within the IT space, within the tech space. And so social
Right.
media really opened up that door for me to be able to see like real life people being, not only being able to make that transition, but to be successful in tech, regardless of whatever background they came from. And so I
Right.
said, hey, I'll make the dive, I'll make the risk. Like, what's the worst that can happen? I can always just go back to nonprofit and education and be fine there. And I
Right.
always tell people, like, once I started coding, I literally couldn't put it down. It was something that, challenged me. It was something that pushed me to learn,
Hmm.
pushed me to grow. And it just sparked my creativity that I felt like I had lost, kind of
Mm,
being redundant and doing the kind of the going in the hamster wheel
right.
of education. And I'm sure a lot of educators can, relate to that, in that you're constantly being regulated by, um, rules and lesson plans and
Right.
benchmarks, and trying to get test scores up, or trying to reach those deadlines. And i
Hmm.
didn't i didn't necessarily want to be constricted by that. And so, yeah, that was really those are some of the big things that really pushed me to tech. And I mean, let's be real, like when you're in education, like it's almost a double whammy to be a creative in the nonprofit or education space, because we probably do the most amount of work and get the least amount of pay. That's pretty much what I tell people all the time. So
Yeah.
tech gives me the opportunity to, be able to do something I love and have that financial stability to be able to kind of pass that on to the next generation.
Nice. Hey, I'm glad you said that because, well, a couple of things on on about what you said. You were mentioning like seeing things on social media. Friends were kind of encouraging you to start coding, and that's the whole reason. Or not the whole reason. That's one of the reasons why BIT exists. Like
Hmm.
part of our mission is to increase the representation of Black people in tech, and whenever I give interviews and I say that, I always try to caveat that with like I'm not trying to say to quote unquote white America like, hey, we're in this space. I'm
Hmm.
actually trying to reach back to our community and say, hey, this is a space that we belong in too.
Right.
And if you see me and you see others in this space, maybe that'll encourage you to want to pursue it, or at least see it as an option for yourself. And so that representation is more for us than anything. The
Hmm.
second thing you mentioned is about just having that economic stability,
Hmm.
and a lot of people kind of assume like, oh, Greg, you found it bit just you know uh, to tackle diversity. And I'm like, no, I mean, I guess you can say that's part of it, but the other part is like I've thrived in tech, for the past 20 years. It's enabled me to be able to take care of my family and do things that, my mom, my dad weren't able to do.
Hmm.
Create generational wealth, those types of things. And that's the biggest thing I feel anyhow, for wanting to get more Black people in tech, is to kind of want to have that progress, and be able to have other people build that generational wealth and pass it down to their kids. So for the economic part of that is more important to me than fulfilling whether or not a company's diversity numbers go up.
Hmm.
I feel like if we can get more people in tech, for the economic part, the other part will handle itself, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, those are good points. Um, you were, you know, a bit scholarship recipient for Tech Elevator.
Yes, I
Tech
was.
Elevator was a boot camp, so we're going to
Hmm.
talk a little bit about that. How did you learn about Tech Elevator?
Actually, I learned about it through a website called Career Karma. I don't know if you've heard of that site, but essentially, it provides people with resources on different types of tech boot camps or programs that
Hmm.
are focused on bringing minorities or people of color
Right.
into the tech space. And so they actually do like a quick like quiz or questionnaire on what is it that you're looking for,
Hmm.
where are your strengths, kind of where do you see yourself in the future. And that's kind of pretty much how I stumbled upon Tech Elevator, and I got the chance to do a little bit of research on the program and
Hmm.
what it was like. And I really loved their whole process of how they nurture people from all different backgrounds, and build them up to be able to be successful going out into the tech space, in
Right.
whatever field they choose to go after. So, yeah.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, and we have a real good relationship with Tech Elevators. I know that there's a kind of a rigorous process in the beginning. Kind of
Yes.
tell us a little bit about about that onboarding the application process.
So I will say that Tech Elevator's onboarding process or application process is pretty, I wouldn't say grueling, but it definitely takes a little bit of time. They definitely take the time to weed out people who are really committed and want to do it. So
Right.
the initial process was filling out an application.
Mm-hmm.
And after that application was just a small like aptitude test, maybe like 10 questions,
Right.
just to see if you have the aptitude to potentially be able to get in the program. And then once you pass that aptitude test, there's a little bit more extensive application process in that, they kind of give you a little insight on what the program will teach
Right.
based on whatever it is that you're going into. And then there is a more extensive aptitude test. And I will say that that aptitude test is somewhat difficult. It definitely challenged me a little bit, but
Wow.
it really tests your. I would say personally, it tests your your visual awareness, a little bit of your math skills,
Mm-hmm.
problem solving, deductive reasoning. How do you approach certain tasks that you're given, and how do you come to the solution. They're really good at kind of like putting that in kind of like a quiz format. And then after that, that's when they based on those scores, that's when they
Right.
determine whether or not you're admitted into the program. So that was pretty
Wow.
much my application and onboarding process. Yes, it was a lot.
Yeah, and I feel like it's somewhat necessary. They're because those boot camps are not easy.
No, they are
And they
not.
want to make sure that people stick with the program, and especially if you're receiving a scholarship and things like that, they
Hmm.
definitely want to make sure that it's going to the right person. So yeah, I definitely understand it.
Do you have a product or service that you would like to share with the BIT audience? Or maybe you'd like to support the BIT community and do your part in helping us with stomping the divide? Start by sponsoring one of our podcasts. Please email us at contactus@blacksintechnology.net.
So, what preparation you stated that they kind of gave you a little bit of insight as to what to expect from the boot camp. So after that, how did you prepare, and if so, what type of preparation did you do prior to the boot camp?
I would say, I did do a little bit of preparation. There are some things that they kind of suggest for you to do. So when you get admitted into the program, there's some pre-work that you're required to do, and they give you a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of time to complete that pre-work before the boot camp starts. But you do have to complete that pre-work in order to be able to officially start going into the program. So the pre-work pretty much just covers like the foundation of coding, like mostly front end. So like CSS, HTML, a little bit of JavaScript, not a whole bunch.
Right.
And basically just helping you to kind of get your feet wet a little bit and getting you prepared for kind of like the more rigorous and fast paced learning that you're getting ready to go into.
Right.
So they definitely give you that pre work to just kind of prepare you for what's next. So that's pretty much how I prepared. And I will say that some of the things that I wish that I would have done earlier on was, whatever topics or things that I was learning in the pre-work that I really struggled with.
Mm-hmm.
I wish that I would have taken the time out to really do my own self study and really deep dive into some of those topics, just so I could have a little bit more understanding foundationally on maybe what it was that I wasn't piecing together, or
Right.
what concepts I wasn't grasping very well. Because I will say that Tech Elevator's Pace, like I'm sure any other like guided boot camp, um, boot camp's pace is essentially they're gonna pretty much teach you a topic and review it and then move on to the next topic, right? Because it's not a 2-year program, it's not a 4-year program. So
Right.
you don't have the kind of like luxury of having a whole lot of time to review things and look over things and take your time with learning concepts. You pretty much have to, take the time to do your own research, your own studying,
Right.
so that when it gets down to kind of seeing if you have that knowledge or if you're able to do some of the tasks that they're asking you to do, you
Right.
kind of you set yourself up better for success by, kind of doing that self study. So that's one thing I wish I would have done. And one thing that I do highly suggest, if you are going to a boot camp and they're giving you concepts and work prior to that, and you are just still like, I'm still not quite getting it, go to YouTube, go to Google. Google is every software engineer's best friend, I
Oh
feel
yeah.
like at this point. Because a lot of people have already, solved whatever it is that you're looking
Yep.
at. So doesn't hurt to, kind of see what solution they've come up with and figure out how they got there. So
Yeah.
yeah, those are definitely some of the things that, I did, or I wish I would have done during my time preparing for the boot camp.
Yeah. Those are great points. I think that it also prepares you for how your career in tech is going to be, because
Mhm.
a lot of times that's what you're doing. No, and so like a lot of self studying, because tech is constantly changing, it's constantly moving, so you constantly have to make sure that you're on top of the latest whatever technology it may be. In your space, you kind of have to stay on top of that. So it's a continuous learning journey. And the other part is that you made a good point about is YouTube and Google, like,
Mhm.
because in there, I think people tend to get I know people tend to get intimidated, especially when they meet someone and in their job, who seems like they're just a genius. Like, oh my God,
Mhm.
that person. And what they don't understand, or they may not know, is that that person is using Google and YouTube as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the difference usually is just experience, right? Like, they just have more experience at finding, it's solving their own problems, right? They've had
Mhm.
so many errors and bugs and had to work through that. They start to gain all that knowledge from all their failures, and now they seem like this person who's came out of the womb coding, when that's not the case at all. They know how to use Google, they know how to search Stack Overflow, things like that.
Mhm.
And so I've seen a lot of, especially when I wasn't a senior engineer, I've seen a lot of senior engineers just use Google, like, and
Absolutely.
say, I don't know, let's look it
Mhm.
up. Oh, this is how you do it. Okay, yeah.
Mhm.
So for anyone that's listening, if you thinking about getting into software engineering or any type of engineering and tech, and you're kind of apprehensive about it, just understand that this is a continuous learning journey. You're going to start at the bottom and
Mhm.
you're going to work your way up, and you're the same people that you see at the top, they were once doing everything that you were doing, so it's no shame at all.
Absolutely, absolutely. I will say, to piggyback off of that, I've
Hmm.
heard a lot of senior engineers say there you're never gonna come to a point in your career where you say, okay, I know everything,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
tech is constantly evolving. The space, especially within software engineering, is constantly evolving.
Yep.
And so you're constantly going to be, once you feel like you've kind of had something nailed down, they're probably going to create or change something else, or um, create a whole entire coding language, and
Yep.
that's going to be more efficient. And there are things that you're going to continue to learn. So if you feel now at the beginning that oh man, I don't feel like I have it yet, like, trust me, there are people who've been in the game for decades and are still like, hey, I don't all the way get it either. So
Yeah.
I just a word of encouragement for
Oh
people.
yeah.
It's constantly going to be a learning. It's constantly going to be a learning curve.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, the experience and the journey along the way is definitely rewarding.
Yeah, I think people have to understand, or need to understand, that less than 60 years ago, like, we were sending men to the moon powered by computers that were not even as powerful as calculators that we have now. Right?
Yep.
Like, that's how far and how much tech has changed. just in that time span, right? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
not a long time. 60 years and comparison to how long everything else has been around is nothing. It's like a blink of an eye. And so, you know, people who think that these people, people know everything, like that's not things change way too often. There's huge advancements in tech all the time. And so you're constantly going to be on that journey where you gotta, and there's even times where when, for me, for example, I get involved in a certain technology, for instance, and I start reading and researching it, and I feel like I gotta go. Oh, I gotta go back to the beginning. I gotta go back to the
Mm-hmm.
basics because I forgot something, in this. So I'll go back and pick up a book that I've read probably, several times before, just to understand like the base concept. Like, oh, okay, that's how. Okay, now everything kind of fits. So there's that as well. So you're constantly going to be doing this dance as long as you have a career in tech, and it's okay. Everyone does it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's up, everyone? We hope that you're enjoying this episode of the Blacks in Technology Big Tech Talk podcast. Do you or someone you know have a dope story that they want to share with our bit audience? Blacks in Technology is seeking guests to be on our podcast. We're looking to highlight the journeys and experiences of Black women and men in the tech industry. So if you know of someone, send them our way. Shoot us an email to contact us at blacksintechnology.net or click on the link in the show notes and fill out our form. We're looking to hear from you. So, sticking with the tech elevator topic, what was your experience like? What were some of your challenges, and how did you overcome some of those challenges? Tell us a little bit about that.
So I was a part of Tech Elevator's first part-time remote cohort.
Okay.
It was a 32-week cohort. Normally, their remote cohorts or their full-time cohorts are about 13 to 14 weeks, I believe. So it's a very short amount of time.
Right.
So the part-time program just allows you to be able to still, work, do your 9 to 5, and then continue to learn software engineering on Saturday morning. So pretty much my experience, definitely, I think people, I know it's like a running theme within the software engineering space where there's kind of like the motivation, there's like the motivation bar. And so you
Mm-hmm.
start off pretty optimistic. You go in saying, yeah, like I'm excited, I'm getting ready to learn about this new thing. And then you start learning all these new concepts that you had never heard before, processes that you've never done before. And then you start, your confidence starts going down, and you're like, oh, this is getting a little hard, but I guess I'm trucking along. And then you kind of get into like the valley of despair, where you're
Mm.
almost like, oh, this is too hard. Like, we learned about this thing yesterday and I still don't understand it. There are concepts from like weeks ago that I'm still struggling with. Like, I don't even know if I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
And then slowly but surely, like once you kind of get past that valley,
Right.
slowly but surely you'll start, like, once you start practicing and creating like your own projects and learning more concepts that kind of piece the puzzle together a little bit, and you
Right.
start saying, okay, I don't know everything, but I'm starting to learn a little bit more than I did, a day ago, a week ago, a month ago. And you slowly start building your confidence back up, and you start saying, okay, like I'm actually understanding this and I'm getting that. And I will say, like, that along with a lot of the other classmates that I had within my cohort, that was pretty much our experience. Like, you're so surprised, like the first week you have no idea like what Git is, you have no idea what GitHub is, you have no idea like, how to um create like a class in Java. And then all of a sudden, like, you get to, the final couple of weeks, and you're building like full stack applications,
Right.
um, websites, and you're just amazed at all the progress that you've gone through.
Hmm.
But I will say, like, it's definitely so fulfilling when you get to the end, but there are tons of challenges along the way that
Yeah.
I definitely experienced.
Yeah. A couple of things from what you said. I've been reading several books around learning techniques, and one is called Deep Work by Cal Newport, and there's another one by, it's called So Good They Can't Ignore You.
Mm,
Two books by Cal Newport. He's a really good author, and he always talks about this initial, like whenever you're really trying to learn something, deeply learn something, this initial shock that you have because you don't get it, right? And
mm-hmm,
how normal that is. But it usually, throws people for a loop. And because it's, I would say, painful from the standpoint of, um, people, if you feel like you're not getting something, you're just like, oh, I'm not getting this. It's painful in that respect, right?
mm-hmm,
People tend to, kind of run away from it.
mm,
And he talks about, if you get over that initial shock of it, right? Like if you start in this kind of habit of like going deep into learning. So for instance, you might start setting up a routine where you say, I'm going to spend 30 minutes in deep learning, right?
mm,
And maybe the first week or so, it's going to seem grueling because
yeah.
you want to run away from it because everything seems foreign. You don't seem like you're grasping it, and becomes a painful exercise. And then once you get beyond, if you can survive like that first week, right, or maybe that first couple of weeks, and stick to it, then you're going to make leaps and bounds as far as being able to engage in this deep learning exercises and this deep focus, because then it's not going to feel as daunting. It's not going to feel as painful. So there's definitely that aspect to it. And those two books have really teaches you a lot about how to get into this mode of deep learning and focus, and kind of getting over that hump. Second thing you were talking about is something that I don't want to take full credit for, but I remember back in 2019, and I'm pretty sure COVID had a lot to do with this as well. But I met with somebody from Tech Elevator, Rita. You know Rita.
Yes, Rita.
I met with Rita. This is the first time I had she. I think she reached out to me to learn more about Bit and to see how there can not only get some ideas for me, but figure out like how maybe we can partner. And so we met at a Starbucks, I think I want to say, for coffee like one morning, and
Mm-hmm,
she was telling me more about the program. Right, she was telling me how much it cost and the time frame of the program, and I told her straight up, yeah, if you're trying to get more Black people or more minorities into your program, that right there is not going to work.
mm, yeah.
Because unfortunately, we some of us don't have the means to just up and quit a job and spend the
Yes.
next 14 3 months or so uh doing this full time. And that's what I said. I was like, that's, some of us are the breadwinners. We don't have that generational wealth, not all of us. And that requires us to have a 9 to 5. And if we're trying to
Mm-hmm,
get more, Black people, more minorities into this program, it's going to take some adjustments. You're going to have to do something in order to accommodate people's time. Like that's, some people have to work first shift, some people have to work second shift. Like there has to be some type of part-time option. And at that time, they didn't have that. It was strictly full time. And then the
mm-hmm.
second thing was around cost, right? Like I was just like, that's too expensive.
Yes.
That's too expensive for me. Like that's, like we're unfortunately, and we don't have that head start like people from other cultures and other races, right? Like that's just the reality of it. And so there needs to be either a more cost effective solution, or there needs to be some more partnerships that kind of take away that cost for people if you're trying to either. So I'm glad that, and I'm not saying again, it could be a lot of it is, I know some parts of it is definitely COVID related because that forced people, businesses, organizations to kind of switch up things and, work remotely and, go down to part time and things like that. But I'm glad we had that conversation, and now the results of it are, them changing their curriculum around to accommodate more people. So excellent.
Absolutely. I'm appreciative for you putting that bug in her ear, because if you had put that bug in their ear, I possibly wouldn't have even have had this experience, because both of those things were big reasons why
Yeah.
a lot of the boot camps that I had initially applied to just didn't work. It
Mm,
either conflicted with my work schedule in that, I don't have the means to take off,
right.
3 months and not work and not essentially to be able to learn something, and with the possibility that I might have to go a couple of more months, searching for a new job within software engineering. And then
Yeah.
I like, obviously, the cost, especially since I went to a 4-year institution,
Yeah.
and got a master's certification in school counseling, because I thought I was going to be a school counselor, but that's a whole nother,
Mm,
a whole
interesting.
nother um, whole nother journey in and of itself.
Yeah.
And realizing, like, hey, I don't have, I don't think I have the resources to take out any more loans than I've already taken out right now. So
Right.
any type of, help or assistance that I could get, I was all for. So I'm so appreciative of Rita, because I know she really advocated for me, to
Nice.
be able to, get the scholarship,
Yeah.
because she even saw like the potential that I had and being able to go through the course. And so appreciative of you and appreciative of Rita. If you
Oh,
listening to
thank you.
this, Rita, thank you so much.
Yeah. That's cool. Rita's a cool person. She was at BitCon. Her and I can't even remember his name. She's gonna kill me. But the founder of Tech Elevator was there.
Yes, Anthony.
Okay, yeah, 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 and we kicked it as well. So it was real cool. Um, so I'm glad that all worked out, right?
Hmm. Absolutely.
But you know what, too, the other part of that is something that you touched on, and I think is really important. Is she advocated for you, right? And
Hmm.
that's something that we also need. We need advocates. We need allies. But the other part is just an opportunity. Like people think that
Yes.
when they say when they talk about diversity and inclusion, the first thing they want to go to, their kind of run to thing is, oh, you're lowering the bar. And it's like, no, we're not asking you to lower anything. We just want the opportunity, right?
Absolutely.
And so once you give us that opportunity, advocate for us, then we're able to take it home. So you're now working as an engineer. You're at Interact. Tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about that. How did our opportunity come about?
So I mean, LinkedIn was really what kind of exposed me to Interact. They, interestingly enough, had a full stack immersive training program, where they take a certain amount of candidates and they'll essentially train you on the stack that their third party company, that they're collaborating with.
Mm-hmm.
So they want entry level, engineers, but maybe they don't have like the time or the resources to be able to train them on all of the
No, okay, yeah.
stacks that they're looking for. And so
Mm-hmm.
Interact had an opportunity where they were picking candidates to essentially be a part of that immersive, with a goal of being able to transition us into a spot over at CVS Health, as a
Okay.
software engineer. So that's pretty much what I'm doing right now, along with 19 other people. We're kind of learning a little bit of the full stack Java that CVS Health pretty primarily like works
Okay.
with the goal that at the end of the immersive training program is about 3 months. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll pretty much take that 3 months to kind of learn about what they're working with and kind of doing projects and kind of learning and growing with each other along the way, with the hopes of kind of transitioning into a role over at CVS Health. So a lot
Nice.
of what we're doing is pretty much learning, learning,
Okay.
learning, learning.
And so how does that compare to, what you were doing at Tech? I know, you're not starting from the, from the bottom or anything like that, but, kind of, compare, contrast a little bit between that and Tech Elevator.
I would say it's very similar in that they're very accommodating to people who may have had like their own, like a lot of experience within software engineering, or people who may have had little to none. But I think the
Mm,
goal for Interact, which I really love, is they want to give the opportunity for minorities, especially people of color, especially Black folk, because I see a lot of us in there, and I'm
no,
so
that's a good
happy.
thing. Yeah, that's dope.
um, they're all about giving us the opportunity to be able to have that role and that opportunity for companies like CVS. And I know you
Nice.
mentioned opportunity, not too long ago, and
Yeah.
Interact is really, passionate about giving us an opportunity. And so I would definitely say that they're similar in that regard to Tech Elevator, but I would definitely say the pacing is a lot quicker than Tech Elevator.
Oh,
I
okay.
kind of got a little, I got some luxury on that. I had 32 weeks, whereas this is 13 weeks. So it's a very short, condensed process.
Okay.
And it's definitely for we're kind of looking for that role essentially. So we're kind of building our knowledge up to potentially kind of move on into like a full-time role
Gotcha.
over at CVS. So that's a little bit different in that like there's actually a job opportunity that that
Right.
is really lined up for us at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there's a lot more motivation to kind of do very well and to learn as much as I can, and
Right.
really support one another, and because I will say at Interact specifically, um, that the cohort that I'm a part of, we're really big on supporting each other. And not that Tech Elevator didn't do that, but it's
Yeah.
it's nice to see people that look like me, that come from
Oh,
the
yeah.
same backgrounds as me, be able to say, hey, we're all in the same boat. Even if all of us don't get a job opportunity here, let's all still continue to support each other and help each
Yeah.
other, so that whatever opportunity that we end up getting, everybody ends up winning and everybody ends up eating. So
Yeah.
I love that aspect, in that, there's that representation there, there's that support there,
Yeah.
and there's that relatability there. Like I don't have to feel like I'm code switching, or that I have to kind of put on this like professional hat for 8 hours of the day. Like I can be myself. I can
Right.
talk how I talk. We just talked about like the other day, like somebody, it's off topic, but somebody talked about like what we had for lunch, and somebody said spaghetti, and then everybody kind of like had that growing dread of like, if you grew up in a household where you didn't have a whole lot of money to be able to eat good every day,
Oh,
you were
yeah.
eating spaghetti,
Spaghetti.
3, 4, 5, 6 days of the week. So we were just kind of relating on that, and it's those small things
Oh,
that
yeah.
you wouldn't think, you think like, oh, it's just it's something that could talk about. But I've been in spaces where I talk about that, and people just stare at me like wide-eyed, because they just don't understand.
Yeah.
Like they can't relate culturally to what that means or represents for us. So it's always refreshing to be in those spaces, and I'm definitely enjoying the journey so far.
I definitely know what you mean. And sometimes spaghetti with just butter, not even
Yep.
sauce. So throwing that out there too. But it's funny because a friend of mine, uh, this was probably back in 2010 when Bit was first getting started. And we were discussing like kind of the same thing. And one of the things he brought up, and by the way, this guy is exceptionally smart, probably one of the smartest people I've ever met.
Mhm.
He's an ex-Marine, and
Wow.
he just has this regimen about himself when it comes to learning. And it's not just tech stuff. It's like game theory. It's all types of stuff. So
Mhm.
economics, it's psychology. So what he does is, he's like, oh, well, I want to know about this topic. Let's just say economics. I'm going to read whoever are the top, economics people in the world. I'm going to read their book, and then I'm going to read 3 or 4 other books, right? Like
Mm.
that's how he goes at things. And so he was real instrumental in I guess me finding kind of like that, like that. What's that? Kind of finding my footing in
Mm.
as far as like in this space. And when I say in this space, not just tech, but helping Black people in this space, right? Being in having that knowledge and being able to like help build community. And one of the things
Mhm.
that he said was, it's not even going to these I think we were talking about tech conferences at the time. It's like it's not about being able to talk tech. He said I can talk tech with anybody, and going into some of these conferences, it's the other stuff. Like, what if I want to talk about? Not saying that there's not other people that can talk about the latest Wu Tang album or the latest this or, but
Mhm.
there's a certain relationship that you have with people in your community, and like you were talking about the spaghetti. Like, if you brought that up somewhere else, people would be like, what big deal about spaghetti? And so it's those things, those small that within that community, within that being that those commonalities that you have that at that time were definitely missing from tech. And back in
Mm.
2009 2010, there definitely there was not this awareness that around Black people in technology. You didn't have all these various programs. You had a few, but not as many as you have now. And you definitely didn't have this community, right? So
Mm.
that part was missing. So going to the these tech conferences, you're definitely not going to get that. So it's good to hear, especially you're being a part of this cohort, that you're surrounded by people who look like you, walk like you, talk like you. This community where you have all these commonalities and similar backgrounds and things like that, and you're able to have that comfort and be
Mhm.
in that safe space, so that it actually when you're not stressed out about those things, it really helps your learning.
Absolutely.
So that's great to hear. So tell us a little bit about like you're in this cohort. Like what are they? What type of what's the curriculum, or what kind of like a day to day? What is that like?
Yeah, so pretty much how our day is structured is the majority of the time that we're kind of online with one another is mostly learning. So we pretty much have our morning and afternoon split into like a morning lecture, an afternoon lecture, where we kind of talk about things that we learned the day prior, and
Mm-hmm.
then we bring up new topics that we're getting ready to learn. So we just kicked off yesterday, so we're kind of
Okay.
building up a little bit. So I know pretty much we're kind of getting into Git, and we're kind of getting into like HTML and CSS. So we're kind of getting our feet wet a little bit, but I've done the boot camp thing before, and I know like this is just like the start of the snowball. It's definitely gonna snowball fast. But I will say, while we do have kind of like our morning lecture, our study hall, and our afternoon lecture,
Mm-hmm.
there are plenty of times for breaks. And I
Nice.
do appreciate that they're developing a culture where they encourage us to kind of take that time away from the screen,
Oh yes.
because burnout is so real in tech. Even if you're not even doing like a tech focused job within tech,
Yeah.
it is very easy to kind of get into the cycle of you clock in at 9, or if you get lucky and you get a flexible schedule, kind of you clock in whenever you want to clock in.
Yeah.
You start doing your work on the screen, and you kind of get lost in that for hours and hours and hours, and you
Yeah.
don't even take the time to take a step back to, eat, to kind of, go outside to get some fresh air, to relax.
Yeah.
And they really do promote that, like us getting those breaks, like, every hour.
Nice.
Even if it's just, going and stretching, or getting like a cup of water, or just taking a quick walk, like those things make such a big difference, because they're kind of preparing us for kind of that work where I know at some point we might get a little bit more, they might give us a little bit more autonomy with our work. And you
Right.
really need to um, kind of have that structure, in that the amount of time that you have for work, you need to dedicate that time for rest, because you're not going to do any good when you're on E. You definitely need to
Exactly.
take the time to refill yourself, kind of get back to doing kind of like that work life balance. Like they really, kind of encourage that. And that's pretty much what I love. But a lot of what we're doing right now is pretty much kind of like soaking, like we're pretty much sponges at this point.
Yeah.
They're giving us every opportunity that they can within that 8-hour time span for us to learn, and kind of test our knowledge, and be able to work with one another, and share knowledge amongst each other. So it's been
Nice.
great so far.
Excellent. And I'm glad that tech has matured in that way.
Mm,
There is a um, there is a documentary that you can find on YouTube, and it's about um, man, it's about one of the earlier browsers. And now I can't even think of the name of it. But they have this deadline, right, where they're losing. Oh, it's about Netscape, the Netscape browser,
mm,
and they are starting to lose market share to, I think, probably like Internet Explorer at the time, right? This is when
mm-hmm,
Internet Explorer first came out. Microsoft started dominating the browser wars and everything like that. Netscape was trying to hold its footing, um, and so you see these engineers, like, of course this was, back in the 1990s and things like that. So as far as like software development goes, and like the process of doing it, like it's definitely different than, they didn't have Git, and stuff like that back then. So um, they didn't have that luxury. They were, so, but you'll see in that documentary, like these developers are like spending like the whole entire night in in the office, right? Like that's, and I've heard stories, of software developers working on weekends, working through the night, and things like that. And so I'm glad that there's like this maturity in this space, in this industry, where they really value mental health, work life balance, because you can't work people to death and then expect them to work at, their optimum level. Like that's just not it's just not how we're wired as humans. Like that's
right.
every all muscles get tired, including the brain, right? So
Mm-hmm.
so it's good to hear that they are, kind of exposing you to that early, because I think a lot of organizations are now, catching on to that. They're like, hey, we got to have a, because people are demanding it, especially with COVID
Mm-hmm.
nowadays, and people being able to work from home, and or having like kind of like that hybrid situation. They're just like, yeah, I'm not going to be working 13-hour days, and I can go to this company and make the same amount of money, and they, I get 5 weeks of vacation, and I can take a day off here and there. They're not going to yell at me or anything like that. Like nobody wants to go through that anymore. Those days are gone, hopefully. And so it's good to
Mm-hmm.
it's good that they're exposing you all to that right now.
Yeah, yeah. It's really nice to be able to kind of see where tech has, how far tech has come, and
Right.
how far the culture of tech has come. And
Yeah.
I'm really hopeful that as we keep progressing, that tech will continue to become better and better in terms of culture, and
Hmm.
how to nurture, like, the minds of the people that are working within it, because it is not an easy job. Like I know, especially like with a lot of social media, like a
Right.
lot of people sometimes have painted it like, oh yeah, I log in, and I work for 2 hours, and I log off and I get to go vacationing for days and days and days and don't have to do a whole lot of work. And you get in it and you start realizing, like, no, I mean, if you have some code that you have to finish, or there's some bugs that you have to sort out,
Yeah.
and you can't figure out what the problem is, sometimes you will go hours and days just trying to figure out how
Yeah.
to solve this one issue. And so I'm appreciative that they kind of are giving us a little bit of wiggle room to be able to kind of uh, work out those issues without kind of dictating or forcing us to,
Right.
constantly work around the clock, because
Yeah.
it's impossible. And I feel like that's where education was for me. Like, I
Mm,
felt like we were getting more and more, we were having to do more and more work outside of the clock. And it
mm,
and it just didn't feel very fulfilling, and there wasn't a culture for educators. And I'm hoping that it's getting a little better. I've only been 1 year out of the game, but I'm
yeah.
hoping that it's gotten at least a little better, where they're at least starting to recognize that, nobody is able to work 24 hours, seven
Right.
days a week. It is just literally impossible. Like, our bodies are not formulated for that. Like, we're not
Right.
created to work 24/7. And so, um, yeah, I'm hoping that, people will look at tech in other different spaces outside of tech and realize, like, hey, we can incorporate this,
Yeah.
not only in the tech space but in other spaces. So
I
um,
agree. I
yeah.
agree. Yeah. I don't envy teachers at all. I don't. My wife volunteers at my son's school, and she tells me about some of the things that and of course, this is elementary school, and you're dealing with younger kids and things like that, and
Mhm.
but just the amount of stuff that they have to do outside of it, and then nowadays they have parents buy a bulk of, because I remember when I went to school, and I'm might be showing my age here or telling my age here, but you needed the real basic stuff, right, like a couple
Mhm.
pencils and things like that, and I didn't need to bring glue, and I didn't need to bring colored paper, and they schools had all that stuff back
Mhm.
then, right? But nowadays they're sending an entire list
Yeah, you got to bring
home. You got
you
to
got to
bring
buy the whole classroom at that point.
right, right. And I've heard of teachers having to come out of their own pockets for supplies,
Yes. Yes.
and so yeah, and so I don't envy teachers as far as like the workload, as far as things like that, and not only that, but they're so underpaid.
Yes.
I wish that it would, I wish something would happen. I don't know how it would happen, but maybe they, take some of that lottery money
Man.
and just right and just kind of divert it to paying teachers, man. Because I'm pretty sure that affects how teachers teach. I'm pretty sure that affects how
Yes,
they
it
want to
does.
work and everything. Like if you know, if I'm coming into class, and I'm not saying all kids are like this, but you have to pay for your own supplies. You have to work later hours. You got kids acting a fool. Like,
Yes.
yeah, and I'm only getting 40, 50,000 a year. Nah,
Mm-mm.
I'd rather do something else. And I'm pretty sure, and and no, not that it's all about money. I know there's a lot of teachers out there that do it for the love of teaching, but
Yes.
that's still a very high bar for people to overcome, right? That
Mhm.
so I hope they figure this out one day. I mean, we were given 50, 60 million dollars to baseball and hey, I'm all about, hey, get your money. I'm not saying don't
Mhm.
get your money, but at the same time, I mean, they're teaching our kids, so something's got to give, right? Eventually.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what are some of your goals? Next few years.
Yeah, next few years, I'm hoping that once I get settled into a role as a software engineer,
Hmm.
I really do hope to give back to my community.
Yeah.
I really had a huge, a strong tie with the youth that I worked with in Kalamazoo and in Grand Rapids, and I really want to be able to give back to not only those communities, but like my hometown in Detroit, because
Nice.
if I would have been exposed to seeing more Black women in this space when I was younger,
Yeah.
it, I think about the possibilities of, would I have taken that route a lot sooner if I had just seen more people that looked like me? And so
Yeah.
I want to be able to help expose more youth, especially like little Black girls, and letting them know, like, you have the capability to be able to be
Yes.
successful in this field. So my hope and my goal is to kind of get back into that nonprofit space a little bit. I want to be
Okay.
able to kind of develop my own nonprofit, or maybe collaborate with other nonprofits in the area, to where we provide like free software engineering courses, or
Nice.
free exposure to software engineers to um, schools in like at-risk areas, or in places where they don't have the means to be able to get that exposure
Yeah.
on their own. And so that's pretty much my goal that I hope um, that's pretty much my goal for the next 5 years. So, hey, if you're
Yeah.
listening, and you got any ideas, or you want to kind of get on that ballpark with me, I would love to have some people, get on the bandwagon with me. I'm
Yeah.
not Superwoman, even though I would like to say that I am. I definitely would love to have a team that has like that same goal, and that has that same mindset about um, creating like that next generation of Black engineers. Because I've always said, like, if you want your company, if you want the tech space to grow,
Yeah.
you have to be innovative. And I believe innovation comes with diversity. And if you are not diverse, you will never be challenged to think outside the box. When you
Facts.
have a diverse group of people,
Yep.
you're going to constantly always be getting new ideas, new
Yep.
ways of thinking. How somebody does, this in one area might be completely different than how they do it in another area. And we see it
Yep.
all the time in many other different spaces. And so I want to be able to help bring more of that diversity into the space,
Mm-hmm.
so that we can really see like tech soar. Like I really feel like we should be living like what is that one show called? The Jetsons.
Yeah.
I really feel like that's how we should be living. We should, I feel like we should have discovered living in space, and we should have like everybody should have, flying cars, and
Yeah.
we should be living in like a futuristic era. But I do think one of the big setbacks is that the tech space really has not like embraced bringing in more diversity
Right.
into the space. And so if I can like push the needle a little bit more towards that,
Yeah.
I'd love to do that. So yeah,
But
that's like my ultimate goal, or dream for the next couple of years.
well, those are great aspirations. And a plug here for there's Bit Foundation, so there's
Yes.
always opportunities for for helping out there. But I think there's a chapter in Detroit, a Bit chapter in Detroit as well. And there's always possibilities of starting one in Grand Rapids as well.
Yes.
But I do agree with your statement about helping at risk youth, because
Mhm.
one of the things that ends up happening in this space is that we end up grabbing the low hanging fruit, which
Mhm.
is a lot of times kids or young adults that have maybe maybe a little itch for tech already, right? Like they're not
Mhm.
that so far removed from it that they're it immediately turns them off when they hear it. They're just like, oh, okay, yeah, I've looked at that, right? So
Mhm.
it's those people that that organizations like ours have normally grab, but being able to the real, I think, impact is going to be made when we really start getting those at-risk youth and bringing them into
Yeah.
the fold, and growing that talent as well. So I
Mhm.
think like I know that there are some organizations out there that have tapped into it a little bit, but I still think, I mean, because if you look at some communities like this, there's a lot of at-risk youth out there that if they just had something else to focus on, they can make an impact, they can make a career in tech.
Mhm.
And so it's always been about, well, how do you go about not only reaching out to them, but bringing them in and keeping them there, right? Like that's going to be
Right.
a key thing too. So yeah, I mean, if you have some ideas about it and you can bring some of those ideas to Bit and want to get something started with a chapter near you, that would be great.
Absolutely. That sounds awesome.
Um, Last thing, are you going to make it or be able to make it to BitCon? We're in Nashville this year, and
Yes. I am definitely gonna make it to BitCon this
okay,
year. I
nice.
loved it last year when we were in Orlando. I loved the sun. I loved
Oh,
connecting
did
with
you
folks.
go?
So I did. I was there.
Did
I
we
was
meet?
there. I think I might have seen you in passing. I know it was
Oh,
a lot going on, and there were so
yeah.
many different like speakers and sessions that I really wanted to go to. So I was jetting all over the place.
Oh, nice.
And I
Okay.
know that I might have seen you on the stage a couple of times, but I don't
Yeah.
think that I got the chance to formally introduce myself. Because I know
Okay.
when I saw Rita at the check-in, she was like, "You got to go meet Greg. You got to go see Anthony." And I was like, "Yes." And then
Oh.
never got the opportunity. It was my first tech conference, so
Oh, wow.
I
Nice.
think I was a little bit overwhelmed by everything, and I just wanted to do everything, and so yes. So hopefully we can meet this
Yeah,
year
we'll definitely
at
do that.
VidCon.
Yeah, when you see me, just come up to me. I'm
Yes.
super approachable, like, so yeah, that would be fantastic. I didn't even know you were there. That's awesome too.
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so before we get out of here, how can people, if they want to learn more about your journey, or even if they want to contact you for, to hear more about your journey, maybe they want to get you on another podcast like this one, how can they get in contact with you?
So I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. So if you look up my name, Deshe, Deshe Woods, you feel free to send me a connect or
Okay.
just a quick personal note, and I'll be happy to get with you. I should probably do a lot more. Kind of journaling my experience. So I'm trying to kind of see if I can do a little something on TikTok.
Okay.
So kind of documenting my journey of on Interrep, since I didn't get the opportunity to do it on Tech Elevator. So
Okay.
you can follow me on TikTok at Woods Deshe. So I'll be on there too, and hopefully if you have any questions on what my journey was like in Tech Elevator or what it's like at Interact, I'm more than happy to be able to share my experience or kind of give you all some insight on, kind of what my, experience was like transitioning from, education into tech. So,
Excellent.
yeah.
Well, Deshe, it was a pleasure having you on the podcast. I wish you nothing but the best. Hopefully, we get to meet at BitCon this year.
Yes, we will meet at BigCon.
Yeah, yeah. So good luck with everything. Good luck with Interact and CVS. And hope to hear from you soon.
All right. Thank you so much, Greg. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Blacks in technology.
Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology.